All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today is Friday, July 10th, 2026. We are so grateful that you've chosen to spend this time with us today. Whether you're joining us as someone in recovery, a therapist, or a helping professional, a family member, or simply someone who is curious about this rapidly evolving field, we are honored to have you here. My name is Christopher Shaw. I'm a licensed psychotherapist specializing in addiction, trauma, and compulsive behaviors. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. Joining me today is my husband and partner in this work, Aon Archer. Aon is a public speaker, integration expert, recovery coach, and he's the co-founder of ArcherShaw and Merkaba Retreats. Together, we work with individuals, couples, and groups through psychotherapy, coaching, retreats, and earth medicine immersions, helping people heal not only from addiction, but from the deeper wounds that often drive it.
So before we begin, we'd like to set the container for today's conversation. Psychedelics can be a deeply polarizing topic. For some people, they represent tremendous hope. However, for others, they raise significant concerns. And some of you may have had profound personal experiences, or others may have witnessed harm. Some of you may be completely new to the conversation. Our intention today is not to convince anyone of anything. This is not a pro-psychedelic webinar. It is not an anti-psychedelic webinar. It is not medical advice, and it's not a recommendation that anyone pursue psychedelic medicines. Instead, our intention is to explore one of the most important conversations happening in addiction treatment today with curiosity, humility, and respect.
Our perspectives come from several places. My 18 plus years as an addiction recovery expert, our own lived experiences in recovery, our work supporting individuals in transformational healing, our spiritual practice, and the growing body of scientific research exploring psychedelic-assisted therapies for addiction and mental health. One thing we would like to acknowledge from the very beginning is that no single approach works for everyone. Traditional recovery programs have saved millions of lives and continue to do so every single day. Psychotherapy saves lives. Medication-assisted treatment saves lives. Recovery communities save lives, spiritual practice saves lives, and healthy relationships save lives. We don't believe this conversation is about replacing one path with another. We believe it's about expanding our understanding of what helps human beings heal.
So over the next 45 minutes, we will share our personal stories, discuss what the current research tells us, explore when spirituality fits into recovery, and examine both the opportunities and the limitations of psychedelic-assisted healing. We'll also spend time talking about something we believe is often overlooked: why profound experiences alone rarely create lasting transformation, and why integration, community, honesty, and daily practice remain essential for sustainable recovery. Our hope is that you'll leave today's webinar feeling more informed, more thoughtful, and perhaps with a few new questions to explore. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that the future of addiction recovery won't be shaped by certainty. It will be shaped by curiosity, by compassion, by rigorous science and lived experience, and by our willingness to keep learning and growing together.
So at this time, I'd like to share with you a little bit about my recovery story. I entered recovery in 2008. And I became a therapist in 2010. 2 weeks into my sobriety, I knew that I wanted to help others heal from this disease of addiction. So I got my master's in social work from Wayne State University, moved down to Texas, and began working and serving the addiction community at La Hacienda Treatment Center in Hunt, Texas, then moved to Austin, where I opened up private practice. I was clean for 11 years. At 11 years clean, I went through a divorce. My life was crazy. I went through betrayal trauma. There was a lot of things that kind of happened all at once. And I had let money, property, and prestige divert me from my primary purpose. I was going to meetings on occasion. I had a sponsor in name only. My spiritual practice was pretty much lip service. I wasn't really growing spiritually. I was kind of stuck and kind of plateaued. And I wasn't as spiritually fit as I needed to be to overcome everything that was happening in my life. And at 11 years clean, I relapsed, which devastated me. And I was out for 11 months, which was even more devastating. I didn't know who I could tell. because as a therapist, I was going into the office and treating my clients, and on the weekends I was using, right? So during the week I was sober, on the weekends I was using, I was miserable, I was once again living the double life. And it really was terrible. At the end of 2019, I had a thought. I thought, I don't want to start a new decade using. That's not the way that I want to set the next 10 years up of my life. So I came back into recovery. I threw myself back into my 12-step program. I got a new sponsor. I started working the steps. I started doing service work. I did everything that worked in the beginning, right? And it worked for a while. For 4 years, I had periods of sobriety, long periods of sobriety, with 1 or 2 days of relapse. And that went on for about 4 years. During that time, I also entered a midlife crisis, which was horrible. Post-divorce relationships, one person after the other. It was the same, really different people, same pattern, right? But very unhealthy. I was not living my best self. I wasn't happy. I was lost in my career. I closed the Shaw Center for Healing, which was a sexual health and wellness center that I built. And from 2015 to 2020, we closed the doors during COVID because we lost funding, which also contributed to my kind of lost feeling and midlife crisis. So let's fast forward to 2024. In 2024, I hit bottom again. And I thought, I am too old for this crap. Like, this is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. And at that point, I had already begun kind of thinking that I don't really have a lot of Thanksgivings left. I'm getting older. If I keep going on like this, there's no way I'm going to live to see 70, 80, 90 or anything like that. Probably don't have very much longer, so screw it, right? But there was also a part of me that still had hope, right? And so I got clean again. I told on myself. I told someone that I had been using secretly on the side, and I jumped back into the program. This time I got a new sponsor. I worked steps 1 through 3 in 1 month. And I was also introduced to plant medicines, not immediately, but through a friend who had come down to Mexico to do a retreat with the earth and plant medicines. And I was always curious about plant medicines. In fact, I've had many clients over the years who have used earth medicines, but I was also very locked into my 12-step program, which prohibited me from doing such medicines because in my 12-step program, they considered that a relapse. They didn't see it as medicine. And so I didn't want to, my ego was invested in my clean time. And so I didn't ever want to embark upon that healing, but I had done everything under the sun, you guys. I mean, I had done therapy on the couch every week for 10 years. I had gone to intensives, retreats, you name it. I had done it. I had worked the steps 3 or 4 times. Like, I have peeled back the layers of the onion so many times. I was so sick and tired of the onion. And I had had a friend who was a chronic relapser, never able to really get more than 3 months clean. And he had come down and worked with a plant medicine man here in Mexico. And at the time that I had hit bottom the last time in 2024, I called him because when I got quiet enough, spirit kind of gave me my, God or higher power, whatever, gave me my treatment plan. And the treatment plan was get a new sponsor, work the first 3 steps fast, get really plugged into your community, and go attend one of these retreats in Mexico. The time is now. You have done everything else. It's time to do something different. You know what they say about repeating the same thing, expecting different results, right? That's insanity. And so I called my friend who had a year clean, first time in his life, and he referred me to this medicine man. 3 months later, I was on a plane headed to Mexico. Now, before I left for my retreat, I was taking medications, a lot of medications, because through the relapses, my psychiatric nurse practitioner had put me on an antidepressant, an antipsychotic, a mood stabilizer, a pill to sleep, a pill to wake, ADHD medication. I was on everything. And the medicine man said, you're going to have to come off of all of that before you come on this retreat because those psychiatric medications can interact with the earth medicines that we're using on the retreat. So with the help of my nurse practitioner and my acupuncturist and Chinese herbs, I was actually able to come off of all of those medications before I embarked upon this 10-day transformational retreat. I arrived at the retreat. I was so willing. I was surrendered. I was ready to obliterate the onion. And I didn't even know that was going to happen on this retreat. What I thought was going to happen was peeling back more of the layers, working through some of the deeper stuff that I hadn't been able to work through. And then I would just be, I don't know, cured, maybe? I'm not sure. But I just went in with open mind, open heart, open soul, and it was life changing for me. In 10 days, I obliterated the onion. The earth medicines helped me open up parts of my brain and healed me on so many levels, right? They healed me on so many levels. And that's a webinar for another day. And if you'd like to learn more about my experience, I would love to talk to you. So please schedule a session with me. I would love that, or even like a 30-minute free call. But it was life changing for me. It was life changing. It was like the old Christopher had died and a new one was reborn. So I left there feeling free, totally free. I left there with crystal clear clarity about what was next for me, what my future held. I left there with insight and profound healing that I had never in my life experienced before. This was amazing. I returned to Austin, jumped right back into private practice, and began creating Merkaba Retreats, which is a earth medicine retreat company here in Mexico. We're based out of Austin, but we do our retreats here in Mexico where the earth medicines are legal. And so it changed my life. And when things change my life, I want to tell the world that there are other ways, right? And I'm not saying that this is the only way because it hasn't been for me, right? I've continued to go to meetings from time to time these days. I was going weekly when I came back from my retreat, and then I kind of tapered off a little bit. I found a few communities that I really enjoy, and I still go to meetings on occasion. But my spiritual practice is what has really amped up. I mean, my connection to my higher power is out of this world. It's absolutely incredible. There is no desire to escape from my life today. I want to live every second, every moment of my life. And that's really exciting. And I know that I have the tools to deal with whatever comes my way without using today. And that's really, really beautiful. And we get to help others with this beautiful way of healing. So I'm super grateful to be here with all of you today and to share a little bit about my story. I have been sober now since May of 2024. My recovery is rocking. I have a mentor. I have a spiritual practice. I have a program. I mean, my life is better than it's ever been. And I have found the love of my life, who you will hear from next, Aeon. It's been such a privilege to walk beside this man. While our stories are different, there are remarkable places where they intersect. We both know what it's like to search. We both know what it's like to long for freedom. And we both have discovered that healing is rarely linear. So now I'll invite Aeon to share a little bit of his story. Aeon.
Once again, thank you all for being here, and thank you to anyone who's watching this later on YouTube. So my story with addiction started when I was 13 years old, and started with, which I'm sure there are a lot of people who, addiction starts with wanting to escape our feelings, wanting to escape the reality that we feel trapped inside. And that led me into a 20-year struggle with addiction. When I was 26 years old, which is when I began my personal journey with the earth medicines, I was so deep in my addiction that I could barely walk up a flight of stairs without feeling lightheaded and like I was going to pass out. And I knew in that moment that something big had to change. And everything that I had tried up to that point was getting me nowhere. I desperately wanted to do something different, but I didn't have the power to do something different. And the funny thing is, when I was like 11 years old, I had saw this episode of Oprah where this group of people who struggled with heroin addiction had gone to the Amazon jungle, did this magic cocktail. Then I didn't understand what it was. Did this magic cocktail, and it helped them cure their addiction. So I booked a trip to the Amazon jungle, and I spent 6 months with the Shipibo shamans living in the Amazon jungle doing ayahuasca ceremonies. And it was transformational. It was profound. I was changed from the inside out, and I was lit up with this beautiful drive to live. And I came back to the United States, and within 2 weeks, I had relapsed. And so what I realized from that experience, that healing is so much more than 1 or 30 transformational experiences, because I had created a pattern, a mold around me that supported the person that I was when I left. And so those molds are so ingrained inside of us and around us in our lives that it's really difficult to maintain the transformation by simply going to have a transformational experience and then landing back inside the life that you left. So I tried again. So I went back to the Amazon jungle. I had the experience. And after that, I decided to move from the United States to Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I lived for 2 years sober, and teaching English. And that solidified even more deeply the power of all of the different elements of our lives in supporting the transformation that we go through. And that's one of the reasons why I became an integration specialist, because healing is so much more than one transformational ceremony, than a 1 week transformational retreat. There are so many, it's about support, it's about community, it's about how do I take these peak state experiences and transform how I show up in my relationships, how I show up in the world, how I show up as an individual. How do I stay grounded to the discoveries that I make in these moments, in these experiences? And how do I not, as an addict, there's a fine line. So how do I not start to simply chase those experiences as another form of escape? And so like that really began my journey with the earth medicines. Now, I didn't get sober and stay sober. I've been a chronic relapser over the course of 20 years before I finally landed deeply in my recovery. And that's because I was in this wounded healer. Like I wanted to be free, but I wanted the quick fix. I wanted to be free and I wanted to be me, but I wanted it to happen. Like I just wanted there to be a switch. And so there have been times in my recovery where like I thought that I could surrender this one big thing. Like, for example, I was homeless in Los Angeles, living in my car with my dog. And so I had this conversation with God. I said, God, I'm going to give my dog up for adoption so I can go into this treatment center. That will keep me sober. And so that's when I really learned this relationship with surrender. And that's because I did that. And I thought that that one big surrender was going to keep me sober for the rest of my life. And it kept me sober for 3 months. And so I discovered in that experience, like I have to say, my addiction has taught me so many things. I discovered in that experience that surrender is a daily process. And so that's where, as part of our retreat structure, daily practice is important because it's in that daily practice that we reaffirm our surrender to our higher power. We reconnect with what we touched in those ceremonial experiences. And it's in the community that we get the support and the continued dialogue with people who see us for who we are and are willing to have those deeper discussions and support the transformation that we're trying to make. And so when I finally landed deeply in my recovery, I was at another rock bottom, and I met this group of people through a Zoom call called Habitual Prosperity. And it was a call of people who were all spiritual entrepreneurs, and I was an aspiring spiritual entrepreneur, even in my active addiction. And after that very first call, I was still using that very first call. I felt it in my heart. I was like, okay, I have to be honest with these people because there is no way I'm going to be able to hide this from a group of highly intuitive people. And I can't really dedicate myself to this and show up for this community if I'm still actively using. And so, as fearful as it was, and as scary as it was to like really for the first time in that moment speak my truth to people who I respected, who I loved, and who I was terrified were going to push me out, I told the truth. And what I got was something I had never gotten before. Surrounded by love, surrounded by a group of people who supported me and who understood what I was struggling with. And it was that and my retreat and my earth medicine experiences, all of those different elements created the space, created the container that allowed me to finally land fully in myself in a way where I'm grounded every single day. I have a practice every single day. And I feel called and driven to build and do the things that my heart has always wanted to do. And so that's just a little bit of my transformational experience, and I just wanted to share that.
All right.
Christopher?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. I think your story, illustrates something incredibly important, right? That this conversation isn't really about psychedelics, it's about healing. For years, the conversation around addiction is focused primarily on one question. How do we get people to stop using, to stop acting out? And that's still an important question because sobriety saves lives, recovery programs save lives, treatment saves lives. But today we're asking a deeper question. How do people actually heal? Over the past 2 decades, our understanding of addiction has expanded dramatically. We now recognize that addiction is often about much more than a substance or a behavior. It's about trauma. It's about shame. It's about loneliness. It's about disconnection. It's about the ways people learn to cope with overwhelming pain. As our understanding has evolved, so has our approach to treatment. We've become more trauma-informed. We've learned more about the brain and the nervous system, and we've begun recognizing the importance of relationships, community, spirituality, and meaning in long-term recovery. And that's exactly why psychedelics have entered the conversation. Researchers at institutions like Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College of London have been studying these medicines for addiction, depression, PTSD, and other mental health conditions with encouraging early results. The research is so exciting, but it's also still developing. There is much we know, and there is much we don't know. And that's why we believe that this conversation is so important. Not because psychedelics are the future of recovery, but because they're inviting us to ask deeper questions about what recovery really is and what truly helps people heal. So let's spend the next few minutes looking at what the research actually tells us, and just as importantly, what it doesn't.
Okay. Go. Okay, as we've said throughout this webinar, our goal today isn't to persuade you one way or another. It's to present an honest picture of where the field currently stands. There have been an explosion of interest in psychedelic-assisted therapies over the past decade, and for good reason. We're seeing research emerge from some of the world's leading universities and medical centers that suggest these medicines may have significant therapeutic potential for certain conditions, including addiction. But it's important to remember something. We're still in the early chapters of the story. This is an exciting field, but it's also an emerging field. Much of the research is involved relatively small sample sizes, carefully screened participants, and highly structured protocols, as well as extensive therapeutic support before, during, and after the medicine experience. And that's very different from someone taking a psychedelic in their bedroom in an uncontrolled setting by themselves. So let's look at what we know. One of the most studied medicines in addiction research today is psilocybin. Research has explored its potential in treating alcohol use disorder, nicotine dependence, and other conditions. And some of those studies have shown significant reductions in drinking days and alcohol consumption, while others have demonstrated remarkably high smoking cessation rates compared to traditional approaches. So participants often describe experiencing profound shifts in perspective. I like to call that the 360-degree view of yourself. Many people report feeling a renewed sense of meaning, purpose, greater self-compassion, and a deeper connection to themselves and others, as well as an increased motivation to change. Now, does that mean psilocybin cures addiction? No. That would be a significant overstatement of the research. What the studies do suggest is that within a carefully designed therapeutic setting, psilocybin may help create conditions that make change more possible. I mean, it really does make the brain more malleable. Go ahead.
So another medicine that's receiving considerable attention is ketamine. Unlike classic psychedelics, ketamine works through different neurochemical pathways and is already legally used in medicine and anesthetic. In recent years, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy has shown promising results for treatment-resistant depression and has also been explored as an adjunctive treatment for alcohol and substance use disorders. One of ketamine's unique characteristics is its relatively rapid effect for some individuals struggling with severe depression, which can be particularly important because depression and addiction so often occur together.
Then there's Ibogaine. Ibogaine has generated tremendous interest because of reports suggesting it may dramatically reduce withdrawal symptoms and cravings, particularly for opioids. Some individuals have described the experience as life-changing. Personally, any medicine I've ever had has been life-changing. And so at the same time, Ibogaine carries significant medical risks because it can affect the heart, it requires extensive medical screening, and it should never be approached casually. While the early findings are intriguing, more rigorous research is still needed to fully understand its effectiveness and its safety. It also requires medical staff during the treatment.
And there are also medicines like ayahuasca, as Aeon mentioned earlier, and 5-MeO-DMT, often referred to as Bufo. These medicines have long histories with indigenous and ceremonial traditions. Many people report deeply meaningful spiritual experiences with them, and there is growing interest in understanding their therapeutic potential. Bufo, psilocybin combo, peyote, these are some of the medicines that I've used in my own personal healing. However, compared with psilocybin and ketamine, the scientific literature on addiction outcomes remains relatively limited for the Bufo and ayahuasca. It's important not to confuse compelling stories with established scientific evidence. We need it all, right? Because both matter, but they are not the same thing.
One of the questions people often ask is, how do these medicines actually work? And the honest answer is that we are all still learning. Researchers believe several mechanisms may be involved. Some studies suggest these medicines temporarily increase neuroplasticity, which obviously is the brain's ability to form new connections and reorganize itself. Others suggest they reduce rigid patterns of thinking that often accompany depression and addiction, which is the same thing as neuroplasticity. Some appear to increase emotional openness, allowing individuals to process difficult experiences that may have avoided for years. And many participants describe gaining a broader perspective on their lives. And some experience profound feelings of connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe at large. Others report forgiveness, acceptance, like the deep felt sense of gratitude, or even a renewed sense of purpose in their lives. These experiences can become powerful catalysts for change. But I want to emphasize the word catalyst, because a catalyst is not the same thing as a cure. Because one of the most consistent findings across psychedelic research is that outcomes are heavily influenced by what the researchers call set and setting. Set refers to the individual's mindset, their intentions, their expectations, their psychological readiness. And that's what's so important in the retreat setting and in the retreat protocol is having those intention setting conversations before the ceremony ever happens. So setting that internal weather, that internal setting within ourselves. What dialogue, what intention do we have? And setting refers to the environment. So the people who are present in your experience, the therapeutic relationship you have with the practitioners, the physical space that you are in, and the safety of the experience. So increasingly, researchers are adding a third component to the conversation, which is integration. So what happens after the experience? How does someone make meaning of what they've encountered? How do they translate insight into actual behavioral changes? How do they bring those revelations into their relationships, their work, their recovery, and their everyday life? How they navigate the world? And in many ways, that's actually where the real work begins, because the ceremony is the easy part. The real work is the integration.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I remember my medicine man after my first retreat telling me, your world will change, or your perception of the world will change, because you have changed, right? You have remembered who you are. You have obliterated the onion, right? And all of the layers of the onion. And now you're returning to a world that has not changed. And so let's come up with a plan so that you can integrate what you've experienced and what you've learned as you navigate living in this unchanged world. right? And so integration is so, so, so key. Another important point is that these earth medicines are not appropriate for everyone. There are individuals with certain psychiatric conditions, including some psychotic disorders, that may be at increased risk. Certain medications can also interact with psychedelic compounds. Medical conditions may require additional caution. This is why proper screening, medical oversight when appropriate, and working with qualified professionals are so, so, so important. Hold on one second here. I have a cement truck driving by. You can't see it, but it's very loud. For those of you that joined in late today, Anne and I live in Puerto Vallarta in the Jungle Mountains. And on occasion, we have no power. And so right before the webinar began, we lost power, which means we lost our satellite internet. We had no battery backups. So we rushed down to a local coffee shop where there was internet. So we're here. Thank God for Zoom noise suppression. Thank God. All right. Okay. All right, guys. So I want to address something that we frequently see in the media. It's tempting to describe psychedelics as miracle cures, but that's not what the research says, okay? The research says these medicines may become valuable tools within comprehensive treatment. They are tools. They are not magic. They are not shortcuts. They are not replacements for therapy. They are not replacements for recovery communities, and they are not replacements for healthy relationships or meaningful spiritual practice. What the science is inviting us to consider is something much more nuanced, that under the right conditions, for the right person, with the right preparation, with the right facilitators who are doing their own work, with skilled support, and with thoughtful integration, these medicines may help facilitate healing in ways that complement but not replace the many paths that have long supported recovery. And that brings us to what we believe may be the most important distinction in this entire conversation. There is a profound difference between having a powerful experience and living a transformed life.
All right, that brings us into a deeper conversation around integration, because one of the things we have learned, both personally and professionally, is that people often confuse a powerful experience with lasting transformation. I tried that many times and it never worked. They're not the same thing. A psychedelic experience absolutely can be profound. It can dissolve long-held beliefs about yourself, about ourselves. It can reconnect someone with love, forgiveness, gratitude, or a sense of the sacred, something that's often lost in long-term struggles with addiction. It can offer insight into the roots of the disease of addiction, trauma, suffering. It can allow someone to experience themselves in an entirely new way. And those experiences are absolutely real. They can be incredibly beautiful, and they can be deeply healing, but they're also temporary, because every ceremony ends, every retreat ends, every therapy session ends, and eventually you wake up the next morning, you have breakfast, you answer your emails, you have a disagreement with your partner, you get stuck in traffic, you experience disappointment, someone hurts your feelings, and a craving shows up. Old fears begin whispering again, and life inevitably returns. And that's where the real transformation begins, because transformation doesn't happen during the experience.
Transformation happens in how you live afterward. This is where the word integration becomes so incredibly important. Integration simply means taking what you've learned and allowing it to reshape the way that you live. It's asking questions like, how do I become more honest because of what I've experienced? How do I repair relationships that I've damaged? How do I set healthier boundaries? How do I care for my body differently? How do I become more present with the people I love? How do I respond differently when I'm anxious, lonely, angry, or afraid? And how do I build a life that reflects what I now know to be true? That is integration. And it's not glamorous. It doesn't usually happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in thousands of ordinary moments, one honest conversation, one meeting, one therapy session, one meditation, one difficult decision, one apology, one healthy boundary, one day at a time. In many ways, that's not very different from recovery itself. Recovery isn't built on one great decision. It's built on thousands of small ones. Over time, these choices become a new way of life. I often tell my clients that insight doesn't automatically create change. Most of us already know more than we live. We all know smoking is unhealthy. We all know sleep matters. We all know exercise helps. And we know relationships require honesty. But knowledge isn't usually the problem. Living differently is. And psychedelics may offer insight. They may create a powerful opening, but they cannot live your life for you. They cannot make your phone call, and they cannot help you tell the truth when you're ashamed. They cannot make amends. They cannot rebuild trust with your children. They cannot choose humility. They cannot choose recovery. Only you can do that. And this is one of the reasons we believe recovery communities remain so important.
So whether your path is a 12-step fellowship, smart recovery, recovery dharma, psychedelics in recovery, NA, CMA, therapy, church, meditation, or another supportive community, healing almost always happens in relationship. Very few people heal in isolation. And addiction isolates us. Recovery reconnects us. And that's true whether someone has worked with psychedelic medicines or not.
In fact, one of the things I appreciate most about the current research is that researchers themselves are increasingly recognizing this, because many of the best outcomes don't appear to come simply from medicine, right? They come from the combination of preparation, the experience itself, the actual facilitators who are leading these experiences, and thoughtful integration afterward. The medicine may open the door, but integration is what helps someone walk through it, and community helps them stay on the path. I also think it's important to acknowledge a potential danger. As people with addiction histories, we have to be especially honest with ourselves, because addiction is incredibly creative. It can convince us that the next relationship will fix us, the next job will fix us, the next city will fix us, the next spiritual practice will fix us. And yes, it can convince us that the next medicine ceremony will fix us. We have seen people chase psychedelic experiences the same way that they once chased substances, always searching for the next breakthrough, the next peak state, the next revelation, but never slowing down long enough to actually live what they've already learned. So eventually we have to stop asking, what else can I experience? And begin asking, how do I become the person I already know I'm capable of being? That, to me, is where lasting recovery lives, not in chasing extraordinary moments, but in allowing those moments, whether they come through therapy, recovery, prayer, meditation, or carefully held psychedelic experiences, to transform the ordinary moments of our lives. Because in the end, recovery isn't measured by what happens in ceremony. It's measured by how we show up on a Tuesday afternoon, how we love, how we serve, how we tell the truth, how we respond to suffering, and how we care for ourselves and the people around us. That's transformation. And that's why integration isn't the final step. It is the path itself. So as we begin to wrap it up today, we'd like to spend a few moments looking ahead. The title of today's webinar is The Future of Addiction Recovery. And I think it's important to acknowledge that none of us have a crystal ball. Okay, some of us do have crystal balls, but I don't have one right here today. And we don't know exactly what addiction treatment will look like 10 years from now, but we can already see some important trends emerging. We're seeing a greater understanding of trauma. We're seeing more attention given to the nervous system regulation, more research into psychedelic-assisted therapies, a greater appreciation for mindfulness, meditation, nutrition, exercise, sleep, and social connection. And perhaps most importantly, we're beginning to recognize that recovery isn't simply about helping people stop using. It's about helping people build lives that they genuinely want to live. So, Aya, when you think about the future of recovery, what gives you the most hope?
Well, what gives me the most hope is that I think we're finally starting to ask better questions. For so long, the question was simply, how do we get people to stop?
Yeah.
And of course, that's important. If someone is actively addicted, we absolutely want to help them stop the behaviors that are destroying their lives. But stopping isn't finish line, it's the beginning. So I'm encouraged that more people are asking questions like, how do we help people heal? How do we help them reconnect with themselves? How do we help them find meaning, build healthy relationships, experience joy again? And how do we help them become fully alive? And one of the things that psychedelics have done for me, because I liked how you mentioned a moment ago about, constantly looking to fix ourselves. One of the things psychedelic experiences have helped me realize is that I was never broken to begin with. And to me, that's where recovery becomes truly beautiful. So one of the things I've noticed in my years this is Christopher.
So one of the things I've noticed, and you probably have noticed this too, Aon, is that people, they usually don't come to us because they just want to stop drinking or using drugs, right? They come because they're suffering. They're living these double, triple, quadruple lives. They're lonely. They're ashamed. Their relationships are falling apart, and they've lost hope. The addiction is often the most visible symptom, right? But underneath it is a human being who longs for peace. And I think that's where the conversation about psychedelics has become so compelling. Not because these medicines are magic, but because they're forcing us to ask deeper questions about suffering itself.
Well, I also think that they're reminding us that healing isn't only psychological. Right? It's emotional, it's relational, it's physical. And for many people, and I think mostly, it's spiritual. One of the things I experienced in recovery was that I wasn't just healing my relationship with substances, I was healing my relationship with myself, learning how to trust myself, how to stay present, learning how to love the person I spent years, I mean, literally years trying to escape, trying to be anyone else other than me. No, today I love being me. So that wasn't something the medicine gave me. That was something I had to practice every single day.
And you know what? That's such an important distinction, because we live in a culture that loves quick fixes, right? We want the one thing that's going to solve everything. Give me the magic pill. But addiction teaches us that healing doesn't usually happen that way. It's layered, it's gradual, it's relational. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes healing looks dramatic. And sometimes it looks incredibly ordinary and boring. Making your bed, which I've done every day since March 16th, 2008. Calling your sponsor, going to therapy, taking a walk, sitting quietly for 10 minutes, and having an honest conversation instead of numbing your feelings. Those moments may not seem extraordinary, but hey, over time, they become a transformed life.
Well, I also hope that the future of recovery becomes less judgmental, because recovery isn't one size fits all. People come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different faith traditions, identities, entirely different nervous systems. So I think we can hold on to our convictions while also remaining curious about one another, because curiosity creates conversation. Judgment usually shuts it down.
I love that, because curiosity is what science requires. And it's also what healing requires. One of the things that concerns me is when people become so attached to one model that they stop listening, right? They stop practicing the open-mindedness that step 2 teaches us. Whether that's someone who believes psychedelics are the answer to everything, or someone who believes they should never even be discussed. Neither position leaves much room for learning. So as clinicians, as people in recovery, and as human beings, I think we're called to stay humble, to keep asking questions, to keep paying attention to the evidence, to listen to people's lived experiences, and to remain committed to what actually helps people heal.
Also, for me, the future of recovery isn't about choosing between science and spirituality. It's about recognizing that both have something valuable to offer. Because science helps us understand, spirituality helps us experience. Science asks how, and spirituality often asks why. So when those two work together with integrity, I think people have a much greater opportunity to heal.
Did you guys hear the echo when he just shared that part? It might be his headphones. We're getting some feedback on the chat that you're having an echo. And
It was because you had failed to mute.
okay. Okay. I agree. Okay, so you said that you think people have a much greater opportunity to heal when those two things work together with integrity, correct? Okay, just wanted to clarify. So as we close today, I'd like to leave all of you with one final thought. Recovery is not simply the absence of addiction. Recovery is the presence of a meaningful life. It's waking up with purpose. It's having people who know you, all of you. It's learning to tell the truth. It's being able to experience joy without needing to escape. It's finding peace in your own mind and in your body. And whether that path includes traditional recovery, therapy, medication, meditation, yoga, spiritual practice, or for carefully selected individuals under appropriate circumstances and with the right experts, psychedelic assisted therapy, our hope is always the same: that people suffer less, that families heal, and that lives are restored, and that more people discover the freedom that recovery makes possible. So thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We are so grateful that you showed up. For those of you that are here watching the replay later, we're grateful for that as well. We're grateful for your willingness to engage in a conversation that is so timely and so deeply important. So we do have a few more moments. I'm going to stop the recording here. Okay, so we're at the end of time. So if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I have put the booking link in the chat. It's archershaw.guru/book online. And I want to leave you with one final thought. Recovery is evolving, not because everything we've done in the past was wrong, but because we're continuing to learn, right, together. We're learning more about trauma. We're learning more about the brain, the nervous system, and we're learning more about the importance of connection, spirituality, meaning, and community. We're learning definitely more about the potential role that psychedelic medicines may play for some people under the right circumstances, with the right preparation, the right facilitator support, and integration. So our hope today wasn't to give you all the answers. It was to invite you into the conversation, to encourage curiosity instead of certainty, to encourage compassion instead of judgment, and to remind all of us that at the end of the day, this conversation isn't really about psychedelics. It's about people who are suffering, people who are seeking hope, people who are searching for a way back to themselves. And we believe that everyone deserves that opportunity. So if today's conversation has resonated with you, we would love to continue it. And I'll turn it over to Aon, who can tell you a little bit more about how we can do that.
And as Christopher mentioned before, we do offer a complimentary 30-minute alignment call where we simply listen to your story, answer your questions, and help you discern what the next right steps might be for you. There's no pressure, no obligation, just an opportunity to explore your path with us. If you're interested in a deeper immersive experience, we also invite you to explore our website, merkabaretreats.com. Through private and small group retreats, no more than 6, we integrate psychotherapy, spiritual practice, earth medicine where appropriate, and comprehensive preparation and integration to support lasting transformation. Our work has never been about creating extraordinary experiences for their own sake. It's about helping people return home to themselves and build lives they no longer feel they need to escape. You can learn more about our work, schedule a complimentary call, and explore our retreats by visiting ArcherShaw.guru and merkabaretreats.com. The links can also be found in the chat.
So thank you, everyone, for trusting us with your time today. We're grateful for your openness, your curiosity, your willingness to engage in this important conversation. We genuinely believe that healing is possible. We have experienced it in our own lives, and we've witnessed it in the countless lives of others. And we remain deeply hopeful about the future of addiction recovery. We wish you peace, we wish you courage, and continued healing on your journey. Namaste. Have a beautiful day, everyone. We hope to hear from you all. Take care. Bye-bye.